Brad Smith is a PGA teaching professional with 38 years of experience at every single level. And in this episode, we jump into the mental game. Why it doesn't mean that you have to stay focused for your entire round, the pink elephant trick that's going to help you focus when you need to, and so much more. I hope you enjoy this conversation just as much as I did. Enjoy. What do most golfers get completely wrong about the mental game?
What they get, they think they have to be focused for 4 hours. I think that's, you can't stay focused for 4 hours. You can't, there's no way of doing that. Your mind wanders and all that, so you have to control the thoughts just at the moment, and I think that's
Mm,
where most golfers get it completely wrong. They're trying to stay focused all the time, and stay in the, trying to, I can't lose it or whatever. You're gonna hit bad shots. It's okay to hit bad shots, but you got to learn how to reel it back in and start all over. Forget the last. Get rid of the past, and then move on to the present and maybe a little bit in the future. You don't want to get too caught up into the future either. That's just as bad. But the past is where we get that PTSD thing. You hit a bad shot and maybe you hit a shank and you go, oh my gosh, then it really destroys you. But yeah, I think it's they try to focus all the way around. You can't do it. You just can't.
why do you think why do you think most golfers default to trying to like thinking that having a good mental game means focus the entire time?
Um, well, I guess they think, we maybe they've heard that. I don't know. They've heard that you have to have to stay focused. We always talk about staying focused. Well, you only have to stay focused for that one shot.
Mm,
I mean, and that's it. And there is ways of doing it with, a good routine preparation in the beginning. Knowing how you're going to play the golf course. So you do all your preparation, which allows you to kind of stay focused when you get closer to the ball and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not sure why people think they have to be focused all the time.
mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, here's something I hear kind of all the time, and I've also thought it myself is that like my swing stinks, and so then I'll just work on my mental game when my swing gets better. Like it's a step two. As a what do you think is wrong with that thinking, or is that the right thinking?
Well, I think at a high level, it should be all more mental more than anything. You can continue to work on things if you feel like you need to have a certain shot, a fade, or a draw, or whatever. Then you go work on that stuff, and you look at your numbers. You look on your launch monitors, and you try to fine tune those things. But I think when you get to a really high level, I think it's more mental than anything. I mean, look at all the guys on the tour. They all strike the ball well. The people that usually do well or finish well, they've been in those situations a few times. They've learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable and learning how to control their thoughts. That's the main thing. And yet we have so many thoughts all the time. So how do you do that? That's the
Mm.
secret sauce right there. Trying to keep it from not going down that path that, I need this putt. My coach is watching me. If I hit this, I'm going to have a under par round. If I finish the last three holes good, I'm going to win the tournament. Those thoughts kind of pop into your head, and that's where we start having some issues. Yeah.
So I've got a friend who struggles with breaking 80 at one course. He's a good golfer. He's never broken 80 at this one golf course.
hmm
What kind of advice would you give him? How would you go about allowing him when he's on the range at that course? How does he need to be preparing to go out and allow it to happen? What kind of preparation does he need to be doing to finally get through that glass wall?
Well, I think it's a lot of it's in the very beginning. Like he's thinking, I want to break 80. So I would say I would have him start talking, I want to break 78, because what he's doing, he's putting 80 in his thought process. It's like saying, don't think of a pink elephant, and what do you think of? You think of the pink elephant. So You think of the purple mouse, the 78, you're going to think more of the 78. So I think that would be the first step. Sometimes journaling, maybe on that same golf course that he plays all the time, journaling on saying, on this hole, I've birdied this hole many times. Maybe journaling and saying when he's played, after he's played, he said, I hit this great shot on number five, and it was a perfect drive, and it drew exactly where I want to go. And then I knocked it up there, and I birdie putt. So when he talks about those things, if he's writing about it, talking about it, and reliving it, the probability of those things are going to happen more often. So I think some of that is in the prep work in the beginning, and then from there, like maybe on the range, maybe play the holes. If he's playing the golf course over and over and over in your head, that helps. He's kind of living in the past. He knows that he hasn't gotten in the 70s yet. And so he has that PTSD. So he may get down to the last three holes and he's playing really good and he gets in that comfort zone again. So it's called a self image adjustment, and what's happening is he's got to build his confidence to know that he can perform at that high level. So, we all do it. Like if you're playing really well, you go, wow, I'm playing really well. All I have to do is par these last three holes. You play defense. Or it's the other way around. If you're playing really bad, you just kind of go, oh well, it's okay. It's not like me to be playing like this. Then all of a sudden you start playing really well. So it's a self-image adjustment. So he's got to figure out how to get past the thought of 80. He's got to be 78, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of that is a mental preparation, knowing that when he's going to go out on that golf course, he's going to have some challenges. It's okay to have challenges and get excited about those challenges. It's not that you're going to play great. You're going to, man, I'm excited. This is the challenge I want. I'm in this divot. Man, I've practiced this. This is great. So if you can kind of get in that thought process, you do so much better. But that's a hard thing. Once you break that 80 mark, it's a lot easier, of course. But yeah, he's got some, I call it PTSD. It is. I mean, he's got some bad memories of that golf course, and whether it's the last few holes or just certain holes, maybe go out on those certain holes in the evening or something. Just play those holes that he has trouble with, and he'll break it really quick. But a lot of it is a mental thing. Yeah.
Mm. You mentioned journaling. You've mentioned that to me before. Can you give me practical ways for two people to do that? One, let's say you've worked with high level junior, amateur, even professionals, right? So maybe somebody like that who's in the competitive sphere. And then let's also talk about my friend who's trying to break 80. Like let's break it into those two. What are practical ways for them to journal? What does that even look like? Where are they doing that? Are they doing that in their notes app? Are they doing it on a physical journal? Can you walk me through what that looks like?
Yeah, you should basically have a notebook, because it's always, they've done studies on this. If you actually write, there's a chemical that goes in your brain, and you memorize it better, I guess. I don't know anything about that part, but I would have a physical journal. I've tried the typing thing because a lot of kids, they just don't like to write, and so I thought, oh, I'll change it a little bit, but it didn't work as well. So I went back to having a journal, and I think it's for anybody. I don't think it's for the elite players or the beginners. I think everyone should do basically the same thing. Um, and I always say you write three things that you did well, and it's got to be kind of you got to kind of like relive them. Like like I told you earlier, you hit a ball, I hit this perfect drive, and I visualized the shot, and it hit in a certain area, and it rolled out a certain place, and then I hit my second shot up on the green, and relive those holes or relive those shots. A long time ago, when I was working with the high school teams, and in the van coming home, I'd have them relive certain shots. I'd say, give me three shots that you did well. So we didn't journal, but we were talking about it. So you write three good shots or three good holes or three things that you did very very well that you're real proud of, and then you have to write what you learned, and it has to be a positive spin on it. Like, I learned that if I could putt, and I had no more three putts, I would play really good. Well, you can't say that. You have to say, if um, when I two putt or better, um, I'm going to score very well. So it's and or say, it's like me to two putt or better. You can do affirmations, and a lot of times we'll write goals or affirmations, and that really helps too. So, but I think everyone can do that. I don't think it's from an elite player to a beginner. It's probably better for someone that, your friend that's trying to shoot 80. That would help him a lot because it's a self confidence thing.
Mm, like it a lot. That's great. And I think I'm thinking now, like I think back to the rounds, the good ones, the bad ones from last year, and it's like human nature to just think of the bad stuff,
Oh yeah.
right? I don't necessarily remember all the good stuff, and so even just throwing a little notebook in my golf bag and writing down some stuff at the end of the round while I'm still thinking about it and I can go back to that, I think that's great. Here's something else I kinda wonder about is how much of what we call the mental game is just, like, having some sort of setup process. It's not like this it doesn't need to be this kinda overcomplicated thing. How much of just having a routine is the mental game?
It's everything. I mean, you really do need to have a pre-shot routine. Like when you go up to the ball, there might be some beginning part of it, like looking at how I always say LTDs, lie, trajectory, and distance, and then put E in there for environment. So LTDs and E. So you look at lie, trajectory, and distance, and then you look in the environment. So the environment's going to kind of usually stay kind of the same, if it's rainy, windy, whatever. But the LTD is important as you're walking up into the ball. So that's your pre, like you're really setting up before you even think of doing anything else. So that gives you that information that you need to kind of decide on a club. So let's say once you decide on the club after you've looked at all that stuff, then it's all about that routine. It really is all about routine. Routine, what we used to do at the college level, we'd had they all they always looked like machines. They always did the same thing every time. And the reason why we did that is I could look from two fairways over and I could tell if they were nervous or if there was a problem because they would speed up, they would slow down, and I would just go over and say, "What's going on? Coach, I had a double bogey back there. I'm really pissed off," and that kind of thing. And I'd go, okay, let's run your routine, spot on, and make sure it's exactly, and you're running your routine. And if you know you're running your routine, you're keeping your conscious mind busy, so the subconscious will take over. So there's some of that. I've worked with some good players that say, I don't think anything. They go, I visualize it, I see it, I have a good routine, and they do. They have a very good routine, but that sometimes doesn't hold up when there's pressure. And when there's something going on, if you're not keeping your brain somewhat occupied in the conscious thoughts, you're going to have your brain is going to sabotage it. It's going to go, oh man, you've always hit this ball to the left, man. And then it does it. But if you're keeping your brain busy on your routine, saying, club behind the ball, eyes of the target, and you're doing some of that stuff, and that's all you're thinking, yeah, it's consciously thinking, but you're kind of doing the same thing every time. And then I have them use a focus word which bridges the gap, but that's it's a lot of stuff going on here. So we bridge the gap of the conscious mind to the subconscious, and then we allow the subconscious to take over, which is your golf swing, and just let it happen. But it's really interesting. For like 4 years we did it down at UC, and I could see them. It was amazing. I mean, I would time them, and I would know that their times were off, and I go, "There's something wrong. I'm going to go talk to her." And I'd go over and talk to them and go, sure enough, there was something wrong. And then as soon as I got them to calm down and run their routine. And I said, "Are you running your routine?" And they go, "Well, I was really mad, and, that kind of thing." I go, "Say it out loud in your head." And when they did their routine in their head, then their timing would get better, and then they'd hit better shots, and they could stay focused. So it's kind of cool how it works. I think that was the magic sauce that I learned um, from oh geez, what's it? Sean Humphreys was the teacher. He's passed, unfortunately. Great guy. He learned it from it's called mental management system, and it's Lanny Bassam is an Olympic gold medalist, and he designed this process that really works really well. And then
Mm.
Sean fine-tuned it for golfers, and it really it was the best thing I've ever seen.
For myself, being having played competitive college golf, still playing competitively as an amateur, I can walk you through my pre-shot routine verbally, right?
Mhm,
For Hayden,
mhm.
he's a professional. I can promise you, he can walk you through his pre-shot routine. Does somebody like, okay, Luke, who's co-developing the app, shout out. He's a 20 plus handicap. Does he need a pre-shot routine?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What would it look like for Luke or somebody like Luke who doesn't know, who might not necessarily have a pre-shot routine, is a higher handicapper? If they're trying to create that structure, what would your recommendation be for them? What are some keystones that they need to have in order to have a repeatable, effective pre-shot routine?
Well, everyone goes to the range and practices their golf swing. You should be practicing your pre-shot routine too. Kind of putting the golf bag to the side, maybe even putting the club back in the bag, pulling the club out, take your practice swings, walk behind, and do all the visual work that you need, and then walk in and hit it. Now, sometimes maybe a beginner, I wouldn't do it as much, but I still kind of give them some parameters to kind of, I want you to do this, this, and this, and then later on, as they get better, then we tie into making sure that they're doing the same thing. You take a look at the target to free up your mind, so you're not standing over the ball and just looking at the ball and saying, "I'm going to hit the ball," that kind of thing. I think that's, you got to practice it. Wintertime is fantastic. You can practice that at home. My son was a kicker, and he would tape out his steps um, for football, and he would tape off his steps, and he would do the steps every time, and then do a swing like he's going to be kicking a ball. So you don't need a golf club. You can kind of do that in the winter time. You can do it in your living room. You can do it during the evening or whatever. But I do think you got to practice it. You got to mentally know that you're doing it. And a lot of the players I work with, the high end, a lot of times they have really good routines, and I'll ask them, "Are you doing your routine?" And they go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm doing it." And I'll ask them, "What is your routine?" And they can tell me. They're pretty good about saying, "Well, I stand here, do this," and then sometimes they'll go, "Well, a lot of times I do two or three waggles." I said, "Was it two or is it three?" Because it may change if you're nervous. And then how many times you look? Well, I usually take two. And I go, well, usually is that you are, or you are, sometimes you do one or two. So sometimes it changes, and then it makes them realize that, hey, that routine is pretty important. And how do I keep that routine the same when I'm nervous, when I'm in pressure situations? And because that's hard, because it does speed up. So usually, if you're running your routine, it should be between from point of initiation, which is behind the ball, walking into the ball. It should be between 10 and 15 seconds. Now, there are some tour players that do it a lot longer, but they found that 10 to 15 seconds is the window that your brain won't wander too much.
For someone who's just starting to realize that this is important, I don't really have a pre-shot routine, not really sure what it is. What's one thing that you would say every pre-shot routine needs to have this?
I do think if you go talk to all the sports psychologists, they talk about visualization. So I think probably visualization is probably the big one. Seeing
Mm,
what you want, not what you don't want. Like I don't want to hit it in the water. You see what you want. I want to hit it on the green. I want to hit it in the hole, that kind of thing. So I think visualization would be the first thing. And then if you had to do a second thing, which would be kind of tied into visualization, is when you're standing over the ball, you look up to the target just for about a 2-second look to kind of take your mind off the ball and maybe your swing, which would go back to kind of visualization, and then come back to the ball and then swing. And if you did those two things, I think that would be probably beneficial for anybody.
mm. That's interesting. I did a little study on you've probably seen all these YouTube videos of professional golfers hitting balls and they're talking to their caddy or whatever, and
Yeah.
it's a Golf Digest video, and I did an analysis across all of them, and visualization was the number one thing mentioned.
Yeah,
That was the thing that was mentioned the most.
yeah, because I think people just think of the like hitting the ball. You look at the beginners always think about hitting the balls, but at your level, usually you're thinking more of the target. And I think that's probably the hardest thing for most people is visualization. So I even give some people some homework on that. When they go home, I'll go just sit there while you're watching TV or whatever, look across the room at the bookshelf and really look at the bookshelf and look at like three things right there, right real close to each other, and then look away, look somewhere else, and try to imagine that as long as you can. And that is a really good drill to do to kind of keep working on your visualization skills because people don't, they'll look at something, but they don't like keep it in their head very long.
Mhm.
So if you can practice that and get good at it, and you can keep it in your head for a lot longer, which is kind of cool. Because a lot of times I'll go, okay, look over here, and I'll have them look there, and then I'll have them look back, and I'll go, now tell me what you just saw. Give me a really good picture of it. And it's really hard for some people, yeah, because you really have to see it.
That's interesting. Why do you think if I was to give that same golfer who struggles with visualization a basketball and told him to shoot it, they probably would just be focused on the target? Why do you think that that's not the case with golf? Why do you think people are not naturally target oriented?
Because you're looking at the ball. I mean, that's straight up. I mean, because I'll ask people when I'm giving a lesson, I say, "What are you thinking?" I just want to hit that ball. Yeah, I get that, but the ball is going to happen if you're thinking out there, right? And I'll say, when you throw a ball to a catcher, do you think of, I just want to throw the ball, and you're looking at the ball? In basketball, they throw you the ball, and you look at the basket and you shoot, that kind of thing.
Interesting. Well, let's bridge the gap a little bit from the driving range to the golf course. What do you see as you spent tons of time on driving ranges?
Yeah.
What have you seen as the kind of number one mistake that holds people back from taking that practice time on the driving range and transitioning it over to the golf course?
Because they're working on technique, and I do think there is a place for technique and drills and all that, but I think if you're going to the driving range to work on stuff, that's fine. Go do that. But when you go to the golf course to play golf, and then you go to the range first, and you're still doing that, the practice style, that's wrong. So when you go to the driving range before you play, it's warm up. You warm up your body. So try not to get too much in the technical thought and then go play golf. So the other thing I would do is learn even on the during your practice time. If you're going to do a block schedule of some drills, go ahead and do those drills. That's cool because you're trying to change things. But then save half of your lesson on just target golf and maybe switching clubs, hit a driver and then play more like you play and run your routine at the same time because that's what you never see. You may see them change clubs and go different targets, but they never run their full routine. So how's that ever going to bridge? Because I'll go, why aren't you doing the same thing? We did this one time. We got on our players one time. They were on the driving range and they weren't running the routine. And they were supposed to run their routine on every shot when they practice. And they weren't doing that. They were just going scrape hit, scrape hit, scrape hit. So we decided to tell them they weren't allowed to do the routine when they played golf. And oh my gosh, they were so mad, and they had a lot of trouble doing it because it just threw it out the door. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, they just got to go up there and hit. Some did better actually because they weren't thinking too much. They were just trying to, but it really messed them up. So then it made a big impact that okay, you got to run your routine from here on out,
Mm,
even during practice. So if they're not doing a drill, if they're just hitting balls, even when they're warming up, when they warm up, they always did the routine. We did that at a conference one time, and they played better. I went to the range, I saw them just hitting balls, and I went up to the range and I go, "You guys aren't running your routine. Run every shot from here on out. I want you guys to run that routine." And as soon as they did that, they played better that round than they've ever played. So it
mm.
does make a huge difference on that. So.
So what I'm hearing is that intent is really important when you're getting ready for a round of golf or when you're practicing. I want to back up even more from the driving range. Let's go back to my friend who is struggling to break 80 at one course. Let's say that drive to the golf course is 20 minutes long. Is there anything he can be doing on that drive? Now, okay, he knows what he's going to have to do when he gets to the golf course.
Right.
Great. He's got that nailed down. But maybe on that drive to the golf course, is there anything that he can be doing, or should he just be doing his best to keep his mind off of it?
Well, he probably should keep his mind off and drive the car, but if he was going to do something, um, I would play the round in my head. I've had some students that I've done that with. One that played, she was medalist in the districts tournament when I had her do this. We took her last lesson right before districts, and we just went out on the golf course. And before that, I told her like 2 weeks before I wanted her to go through the round every day, every evening. And I said, if you fall asleep, you fall asleep, but take that time and go through the round in your head, how you're going to play that golf course. And no, all great shots, hit it there, hit it there. That would really help your friend that's trying to break into the 70s, um, to have him visualize all the great shots that he's done. And matter of fact, that's how I passed my playability test too. By the way, that
Mm,
I didn't pass it the first time, and I worked very hard on it. I mean, I hit more balls than anybody around. And the second time, I was working so many hours in the shop, I never had time to practice. And I did that. It was kind of self hypnosis, I guess. I mean, I'd lay there and I went for a whole month. I played the golf course in my head every evening when I fall asleep. And I have never been that focused ever in my life. I mean, yeah, I would stand on that tee and I know exactly where I was going to hit it and passed without any trouble at all. I mean, it was like super easy. So I would say, while he's driving, maybe play the golf course in his head, all the great shots. Because most of the time, like we said earlier, you live in the past, you live in the
mm,
bad stuff. So if you're thinking of all the good stuff, you have to work harder on that because we do live in the bad stuff, unfortunately.
yeah,
But yeah, I would say
that's
so.
interesting.
Maybe the night before or 2 nights before or whatever, he starts, playing the golf course and playing exactly where he wants to do it. Yeah.
So we've got this great prep on the drive to the course. We've got this great prep as we're warming up. One thing that I think that a lot of people struggle with is setting the right expectations for themselves, right? I'm sure that you've seen this too. A lot of 20 handicaps expect to play like a 10. A lot of 10 handicaps expect to play like a scratch, right?
Right.
Um, how can somebody set the correct expectations, and then w- what should they be doing when they don't meet those expectations?
Yeah. You do have to put sometimes the expectation sometimes happens on, they don't take in consideration the weather or the golf course they're playing, that kind of thing. So they think I used to see this all the time too. They think they're going to shoot like the 74, but it's the hardest golf course they've ever played, windy conditions, and then they come off with a 78 or an 80, and they're all pissed off. Um, but then they look at the field, and the field did the same thing. And we'll sit down and we'll go, but look at the conditions and look at the golf course. This golf course is harder than you've ever played, the course rating and all that. So I think you got to look at all that. Yeah, that's a hard thing to deal with, the expectations. And I do think some people have too high expectations. They have to know their self-image. I always said you have to have your conscious mind and your subconscious have to be equal. Like you got three different circles, and the self-image has to be the same size of the other two. If your self-image gets too high, which is be your expectations, and you don't have the skills for it, then you have to come to the realization you better go work on your golf game. Or let's say you work really hard and you think your golf swing, so your conscious thoughts and you're working hard on your golf swing is really high and your self-image is really high, but you don't allow your subconscious to take over, allowing your golf swing to happen. You still stay in the conscious thoughts, the technique, and not allowing you to play golf, then that ruins you too. So you have to have all these equal components. So the
Mm,
expectations probably would be more like, let's journal and try to get those expectations realistic, that kind of thing, or trying to raise your self-image, your confidence level a little higher to get to that level. But I think you have to have come to the realization, if you had three circles, are they all equal? Are you
mm,
allowing your swing to take over? Just let it happen, or are you stuck in the conscious thoughts of the technique? Or is your image, your self-image, you think you're the best player in the world, but you hadn't put the time in? Well, that ain't gonna work either. So I think you got to have those all three circles in equal parts. I don't know if that answered your
mm.
question, but that's kind of
No, it does because I think, it seems like a lot of golfers play their best when they stop caring, and it sounds like that's just the result of, uh, it is what it is. I'm gonna let it happen. No expectations. You're not overthinking what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. You're not thinking about, oh, like all I've got to do is just this,
right.
right? It sounds like kind of the culmination of a lot of things you've been talking about is like, man, just let it go. Stop caring. Let it happen.
Right. You got it.
Okay.
Yep,
Well,
that's exactly right.
that's awesome. So, okay, I've stopped caring completely. No, I'm kidding. I'm on the golf course. I'm free. I'm rolling, and then I hit two balls in the water. I've got this big blow up hole. Life's moving at me fast. What that walk or that cart ride to the next hole? How can I? Is there a reset button I can hit? What do I need to do to get back in it?
Yeah, I think everyone's got to find that for themselves to a certain degree. Mine was every time I heard the pin go into the hole, my I would say to myself, new hole. And to this day, when I hear a pin go in the hole, my brain goes, new hole. It's the weirdest thing. So you got to kind of, some people use their club, they throw their club back in their bag. And as soon as they throw their club back, they got to reset. They got to know they reset. It's okay to be upset or mad, to a certain degree. Some people get mad more, but you do have to have that reset button. But that's the beauty of running a really good routine on the next shot, because now you're really engrossed into the that routine. And if you're keeping your brain busy on the routine, the I shouldn't even say routine, it should be process. We're running the
Mm,
process so well that everything just kind of disappears. And that's the key, I think, after you let the getting mad and finding that reset
yeah.
button, is bridging the gap to the next shot, because you got to stay in the present mode all the time. Um, and that's kind of hard to do when you have a bad blow up hole. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could probably spend part of a blow up hole could be course management,
Sure.
and we could probably spend an entire another podcast talking about that, and I'm sure that we will. But if we just had to kind of boil down course management a little bit, how much of course management is just ego and expectation management?
Yeah, you're probably right. A lot of it, oh, I can hit over that corner, I can get to the green, you know. So yeah, you got to kind of know your limitations. You got to know your game. You got to know your patterns. You know, if you have a certain pattern, you know, you need to use it. You do need to know where the trouble is, but you don't dwell on the trouble.
Mm,
But it's like playing chess. You do have to know, uh, you kind of think ahead to a certain degree on each hole. How do I need to play this hole? But if you put the time in the beginning, um, and say, this is how I want to play this hole. And there's some apps out there that do all that stuff, where you can get a GPS thing and say, well, I only hit the ball this far. So you can kind of pre-plan. And we used to do that all the time. I'm sure you did that too, you know, before you played any tournament. You sit down and you kind of go through, okay, this is where the tees I'm going to play. This is the wind's going to be coming from this direction, probably this weekend. So I need to aim here because of this, and I need to hit this club. And then we'd have them all write it down, of course, and they would have it in their book. They'd have a second sheet besides the pin placements and all that, and they would, at each hole they would read it again before they played, and that really helped them stay in the moment of, okay, here's my game plan. This is what I'm supposed to do. But boy, I really like to cut over that corner, you know, that kind of thing. So it keeps them occupied. And yeah, I've done the prep work. This is where I'm supposed to go, you know. And so they just go with the plan.
mm.
So I think that helps. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Well, have you ever, you do all that prep work before an event, and then you're working with these high level players. They've got all the physical talent in the world. They're willing to put in some work beforehand to make sure that they're prepared and they're ready to go. But have you ever worked with somebody that's kind of in that bucket and then just can't get out of their way mentally on the golf course? And then how do you overcome that? Like I'll use an example myself. Not that I was like a world class college player. Um, I was in contention in an event in Florida, really struggled coming down the stretch, was hanging in there, get up on 18. I've got the ocean to my left and all of America to my right. And you can probably guess where that golf ball went.
Yeah.
What do you have to work on with that student to help them get out of their way mentally?
Well, they have to learn from their mistakes. I bet you learn from that mistake. You would do that differently, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that goes back to journaling. You know, you learn, you know, as you get older, of course, and you play a lot, you're going to learn those mistakes. And if I was coaching you, I would say you will never ever play in another tournament if you don't go by your plan. So so
Mm,
if I was your coach, I would have said that to you. And I would say,
yeah.
so if you do this one more time, you're done. You're gonna have to sit home next time, and you're not gonna be able to play. So that would be, you know, what you can do as a coach. Now they might get in the transfer portal and say, "Well, I don't want to work with you anymore." But that's what they need. I mean, they need to learn. You know, maybe as a coach, you're actually saying, "Hey, you're not doing this." As a caddy, you know, sometimes they can say, you're in the lead here. There's no reason to do that. You know, let's hit it over here, and then kind of reason with them a little bit better. Sometimes that works, but sometimes they just got to learn and fail, because they're going to learn a lot quicker
Mm,
when they fail. Yeah.
interesting. All right, I've got kind of a this question's going to come out of left field. Um, but do you think the golf industry has a financial incentive to keep people focused on swing fixes instead of actual skill development?
Swing, swing skill. I don't think so. I don't know. That's a good
Mm.
question. That's a very good question. Where did this question come from? That's interesting.
Well, I'm just thinking through. I mean, I've fallen trapped to this. Buying all kinds. We talked about training aids previously, and there's all kinds of golf swing tips all over everywhere, and I believe there's a financial incentive to do well at those. Whereas I don't see very many I mean, very few coaches financially succeed based on helping a golfer get better with the skill, like improve their skills, right? Or improve their mental game. And I'm just curious, you obviously work with both. And so you see the value in both.
Yeah.
And I'm curious kind of how if that flip switch needs to be flipped. Um, how can is that just a human nature thing where one's a little more tangible than the other and therefore it's easily monetizable? Like I just wanted to walk through that topic a little bit.
Yeah, that I mean, there's a lot of people trying to get into the business. They see maybe some of us that have been teaching for a while, and they say, "Oh, I'd love to do that. He's doing well. I want to be, that do that." And they have the hook of, I love the game. I'm hooked to the game, and then now they want to do what their passion is. So I guess it's like anything. You find your passion. I mean, it was my passion, but I wanted to help people. I didn't have the passion of working in a shop or anything or selling stuff, but I wanted to help them grow as a golfer. And yeah, there's probably some out there, quite a few out there actually. If you go through the social media aspect, the online stuff, or writing a book or um, I don't know, you can get my secret swing or whatever, but is there really a secret swing? I think everybody's different. So, um, yeah, there might be some of that, but I think that's within in any field. You probably
Mm,
have some of that. People are going to try to monetize, um, and not do it for the right reasons, I guess.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah. Yeah,
All
that
right.
was an
Well,
interesting question. Yeah, but that's been going on for years, of course, trying to sell this is the perfect thing that's going to save your golf swing. This is the perfect club that's going to make you hit it 300 yards further, whatever. And
yeah.
then you see it in the golf swing or the teachers, they say this is the only way you can swing. Well, everybody's different. I worked with a TPI guy the other day and realized, I probably can't do some of the things that you can do, so everyone's
Yeah.
built different. And I'm getting older, of course. I can't turn like I used to. And so my swing has to change. But yeah, but if you looked out there, if you're 55 and older or 60 plus or whatever, here's the swing that you have to have. Probably not. If I was in great shape, I probably could swing more like you, but I'm not. So, so anyways, I need to get in the gym.
Yeah. I think,
That's what it is.
well, like you said, everybody's built different. Everybody's got different physical limitations. There's things you can do that I can't do. Like everybody's body's put together a little bit differently. I don't know. I think that's
That's a good question.
I've been trying to read more of the old golf books, right? Quote unquote old. Like I've been going back through Bob Rotella's work
Sure.
and trying to understand what are the common threads that work well no matter what time period we're in,
Right.
right? Like I think it's easy to get bogged down in what's current and lose sight of if it's one of those things that's going to work forever. Like Scotty Scheffler's swing only looks weird because there's a cookie cutter swing now.
Right. Right.
It probably would have looked like nobody would have batted an eye in the 80s,
That's true.
right?
That's true. That's
So
very
it would have just been another Jim Furyk,
That's right.
you
Or
know.
Lee Trevino
And
or, Arnie or, they all had different swings. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Well, thanks again for your time, Brad. I'm gonna finish it off with one question
Sure.
here. What's one thing you want someone listening to this to think about the next time that they tee it up? I know we're barely getting past some really cold weather and it's going to hit us again, but between now and April, what is that one thing that they should be focusing on the next time they tee it up?
Well, you should always have good fundamentals. I mean, you could have done a lot of the grip, posturing. You can do a lot of that stuff during the winter months. But I would say visualization. I think I'd go right back to visualization, because I think most people don't do that. I think your top players do, and usually from about a 10 handicapper, maybe 12 and below. The lower handicappers will be more visual and see their targets, know what they want. But a higher handicapper is all about technique, hit the ball, that kind of thing, control the ball. So I would say trust your swing. Maybe see it, trust it, feel it, or see it, feel it, trust it, that kind of thing. So I'm big on
Love
that.
it.
So yeah, just grip it and rip it.
I love it. That's what my dad used to say. I knew we always thought it was stupid, but he used to say, "See the ball, be the ball." I'm sure he still says it,
That's
but
good. That's
uh,
good.
it was really funny. So yeah, shout out to dad. Well, thanks again, Brad. Where can people find you? Where can they book a lesson with you? Where can they learn more about you?
Right. They can go to my website, and the easiest way is my name, bradsmithpga.com. They can book the lesson there. And I'm at First Cut. It's across from Dayton Mall. We have Trackman and all that stuff. So, it gives me all the numbers so I can get very technical with people. But then I use visual with my video camera and all that stuff. And then we talk a lot about the mental part of it too. So we do it all. Yeah.
Love it. That's great. So I can come get some PF Changs and then go hit some balls with Brad. That
Yeah.
sounds like a good time.
Yeah, you ought to
Well,
come up.
thanks again, Brad.
Come up and visit me. Yeah.
Thanks again for having us on, or for having on,
Be on.
for
Yeah.
being on.
Being on.
Appreciate it. Once again, if you're interested in a lesson with Brad or learn more about him, we'll toss those links in the bio and in the description below. Thanks again, Brad.
Thanks.
As always,
Thanks.
time is limited. Play ready golf.